Welcome to EDU 350 Module 2, Teacher Preparation, Curriculum, and Assessment. Module 2 is about the theoretical foundations and learning standards. So in Module 2, we're going to learn about, we're going to identify examples of educational theories, of how educational theories influence curriculum. So, for example, behaviorism, constructivism, connectivism, humanism, cognitism. So we're going to be learning about all these educational theories and how they influence curriculum. And then we're also going to describe the purpose of learning standards in curriculum design. So how do we use learning standards in order to create curriculum? So in terms of educational theories are conceptual frameworks. They focus on understanding the cognitive, emotional, and environmental influences that affect learning. Then there are guidelines for educational institutions to design, apply, and assess instructional strategies. So we can use these educational theories to help us plan learning activities in the classroom, as well as in order to help us understand how our students learn. So in this video, it goes over educational theorists, and it explains who they are and how they contributed to the field of education. So this video is going to be very important for your learning in this module. And so again, we have several educational theories. We have cognitive learning, behaviorism, constructivism, humanism. Every theory offers a different lens into education, so there's some overlap, and there's some similarities, and there's some differences. Excuse me. So building background. So our learning standards are statements that describe, so then we have our learning standards. So we have our educational theories, and then we have our learning standards. So our learning standards are statements that describe what students know or should be able to do by the end of the benchmark or the grade level. So again, our educational theories, we use them to help us understand how students learn, and we use that to help us design our learning activities. And our standards provide us with a benchmark for each grade level. So they help define the skills, knowledge, and understanding students should know. They provide clear goals for teachers, and they guide curriculum and instruction across schools, districts, and states. So we use standards to help us plan curriculum. So basically, standards are like we plug into the GPS as a destination, and then the teacher uses the educational theories to choose the best path for their students to get there. So here's the different learning standards we have in the state of Illinois. We have the early learning standards, the Illinois Early Learning Standards, which are used for preschool and pre-K. We have Common Core Reading and Math. We have the Culturally Responsive Teaching and Leading Standards. And then we have the Social Studies and Science Standards. So the science standards are the next generation science standards, and then the social studies standards are through the state of Illinois. So in this article, in the reading for this week, you're going to learn about how to read and understand interpreting educational standards, and these are the main focus questions. When we think about educational standards, we have different, standards are used across different platforms of education. So, for example, the top, right, you have the state curriculum framework, right, that I mentioned. So the state kind of sets what standards you are going to be using in your classroom. Then you have the district, right, curriculum guides. So then the district, based off of what the state kind of says are the standards or what's allowed, then the district then chooses a curriculum that goes into that fits into those standards. Then the teacher uses the curriculum that the district provides to then create goals and daily lessons and objectives. And then finally, the teacher is able to use that curriculum, those lessons, to progress monitor and to keep record of assessment of the students. So this is kind of like the trajectory of how we use standards from the top all the way from starting from the state level all the way down into your each individual specific classroom. And then when we think of standards, right? We have the domain, the strand, the standard, the benchmark, and the progression. So this is directly related to your assignment to this week, and there's a specific PowerPoint that goes into each one that you're going to be using for the assignment. So we have the domain, right? The largest area, such as literacy, math, social, emotional. Then we have the strand. So literacy, for example, is a domain. Then we have the strand, right? Which is like a major category inside. So for example, if the domain is ELA, right, or literacy, the strand would be writing. Then you have the standard, right? So the standard would be write arguments to support claims and analysis. And then you have the benchmark, which is the measurable checkpoint. And then you have the progression. So it would be kindergarten, first grade, second grade. So this is kind of how standards work. This article or this video in the readings will explain to you, or in the course materials, will explain to you more about how curriculum and standards are used, who will decide what will be taught, and how do states influence what happens. And then in this article, Understanding Curriculum, we talk about curriculum as a subject, curriculum as a plan, curriculum as an experience, and curriculum as a product. And then now Understanding by Design. This is about curriculum planning. So standards are not curriculum. We use standards, we use educational theories to help us create curriculum. So when we have Understanding by Design, it's essentially backwards design. You start with your learning goals, then you use those goals to create your objectives. You use those objectives to then create your learning activities and your materials. So it's kind of a backwards design framework. And the reason why we use this is it helps with clarity and alignment, because you need to make sure that your standards, your goals, and your assessment all align. And then this is just another guiding questions in using UBD or backwards design. And finally, what's due. So this week we have what's due is your PLC discussion posts about theories. You're going to review each of the main curriculum theorists. You're going to ask yourself these questions, use the template to help you answer the questions, and then discuss the following with your peers. And then Module 2 assignment. These are the presentations that I mentioned that go through the standards more, so they're really important. And I have a specific video explaining how to do this assignment. So essentially, you need to use one of these templates, and then from using these templates, you use these materials to help you fill out the template. And again, I have a separate video to help with this. If you need anything, please remember you can always send me an email. My email is right here on the top of the presentation. You can also join office hours or send me a text message. And all of that's available in the course announcements.